Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hessen, back with a brand new episode here on The Truth. Back once again with just Lucas today. No
Yeah.
AJ. Lucas, you had intramurals tonight. How'd that go for you?
Not good. We lost by like 30 something, but we didn't really.
Oh, sounds like Iowa
I would
today.
say we didn't really try that. Like we're not doing the little things. We're just. I say we're shooting like 25 threes a game and not really rebounding, but it's all right.
Who's your team?
It's just the same people I played football with. So and we were missing our best player, so we're not really big. So that's kind of a problem. I'd say the other team got most of their points on the fast break, and we just didn't really. I don't know.
How
It was
many
just we were just
teams?
shooting.
How many teams are in intramurals?
Jeez. Each division, there's four for men's, and I'd say there's probably 70 teams. Yeah,
Really?
I'd say there's probably
Did it
70.
did it cost money to play or is it free?
It's $50 intramurals like for the whole year. So any intramural,
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
definitely worth it.
how many people do you have on your team?
We have eight, but like every time it's only been six show up, so it's
Yeah.
kind of just cardio, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, it's good cardio. I mean, obviously, I do intramurals at Northern. We only have 11 teams total, and so it's a little bit different there. But yeah, I get that. But I remember we were going to record a show, and you said that you had intramurals. I was like, oh yeah, is it every Sunday or what?
Yeah, every Sunday night. Well, that's like just the division we're in, but it's like Sunday, Monday,
How does
Tuesday,
how
Wednesday.
does how does playoffs work?
Playoffs is everybody. So there's the A bracket and the B bracket. We're always in the B bracket because we're bad. So like the
Is it
top
like
of it,
how many games do you play in a season?
it's only three. It's three in the regular season, then playoffs. So like the top 40 go in the A, bottom 40, and then like the top overall team gets the first pick of what seed they want to do and all that. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Seems like a bigger thing and
yeah,
like
it's
more
very
complex than it really needs to be. But are you like the captain, or do you have a
yeah.
captain?
I'm always the person that puts it together. So
Nice. Well, good for you. I'm the same way. And now I'm running intramurals here at Northern, so.
are you serious?
Basically. So, yeah, well, there's your intramural talk for the day, guys. We are back with another episode. No AJ. I have tried to get AJ on as much as I can, but AJ, Lucas, and I all have three completely different schedules. AJ's in the midst of his season. I know he was texting me. He's got 4 games this week, like dentist appointment, doctor's appointment. So, at least for now, and probably throughout this entire series, it's just going to be Lucas and I. We're going through 8 shows for this first set, which is going to be 8 shows of players that we're going to avoid, and then we'll do 8 shows of players that are maybe sleepers for the upcoming MLB season. We're kind of getting closer. I think there's about a month or so left
Yeah,
till opening day, and was it Seoul, Tokyo?
I think so. Yeah, Soul Series.
Yeah, somewhere out there. So we're kind of getting down to the nitty gritty. I think we just have these shows coming up here, and I also think moving forward, we're going to be back on this kind of like more fluid and regular um, schedule. I know it's been kind of fluctuating, but especially for now, Lucas and I will mainly be doing these shows. AJ will pop in when he can, but for now, it's just going to be us two. And today, we're going to start with starting pitchers. These shows are meant to be short. I say that every series and every show, but really these are supposed to be short. We have 6 players total, 3 for each, that we're going to talk about as players that we're going to avoid or would tend to avoid more for whatever reason, whether it's ADP, whether it's just the player itself. So should be fun and exciting. And without further ado, Lucas, go ahead and give me your first player you're avoiding.
Yeah, first guy for me. This might be a little hot take, but I got Roki Sasaki for the Dodgers. I've kind of seen this a little bit. He's obviously one of the top free agents that was signed in terms of expectation, but he's kind of had a little bit of injury risk. So I think not only like is the risk there as a player, but I think he's probably going to get very highly picked. And this is someone who it's not the same kind of thing as a minor league pitcher, but he's going to be like he's going to have to go through some growing pains. And I think that the expectations are extremely high, especially for the Dodgers, who spent like $1 billion every offseason. So I think that might be someone who's not necessarily a guy you want to just avoid entirely, but I would be a little weary of picking him super high.
Yeah, so Roki is definitely one of those interesting guys. Like you never know what you're going to get out of Roki, especially since like there's so much hype surrounding him coming into LA, coming from Japan. But he's probably going to end up having success because he is, on the Dodgers and whatnot. But I definitely am avoiding him as well. I think Roki's one of those guys you just never really know. But like I said, if it was any other team, he probably would be a bust. But since he's with the Dodgers, he'll probably be like the next best thing. For me, this is going to be a hot take, I think, for some, but it's going to be Chris Sale. Now, obviously, Chris Sale had a huge season last year. The biggest thing with Chris Sale that he proved to me last year was his ability to stay healthy. Like everyone knows that. Had a great season for the Braves. He was definitely, one of the best. He won the Cy Young there for Atlanta. He had a 2.38 ERA, a 1.01 WHIP, and 177 innings. That was the first time he legitimately had a good amount of innings since 2019 in Boston, where he had 147, and he was just a dominant pitcher, right? K to walk ratio of 5.8. A lot of things that are good in that aspect. But the biggest thing for me going into year two with him is, or with Atlanta, I should say, is can he stay healthy, right? Like obviously he sustained that, but this is a guy that periodically would make IL stints for extended periods of time. And like I said, this was his first fully healthy season since 2019. I think with Chris Sale, he's one of those guys that I definitely would like to have on my team, but with pitching, it's always one of those things. Like I would rather draft pitchers late because obviously Tommy John injuries like that. Like pitchers always seem to be hitting the IL shelf, and that's my biggest area of concern for him. And on top of that, what's his load going to look like for him going into this year? Because obviously Atlanta's a team that always seems to have success year in and year out, and a big part of the reason why they had success last year was their ability to pitch and pitch at an effective level. But now you look at that rotation, and there's a lot of question marks. I mean, Ronaldo Lopez looked solid. Strellenbach, solid. Strider coming back from injury. I mean, Strider was tremendous, but how does he bounce back from injury? You lose Max Fried to the Yankees. Like, there's a lot more weight on Chris Sale's shoulders, and I just don't know if he's going to perform to the level that he did last year, especially with, I guess, what he's expected to do, especially from trying to replicate that Cy Young award that he did. All right, what about your second player?
Yeah, second guy for me is Gerrit Cole. I think you had him last year. I don't remember totally, but
And
I
I'm
think
keeping him
with
this
him,
year.
yeah, you're gonna keep him. All right. Well, I also have a keeper on my list that I put in here, but that's for another episode. But I think the thing with Cole is injuries. He's getting up there in age. I'm not totally sure. Okay, he's 34 years old, so that's kind of think the territory. But I mean, it feels like for the past 5 years, he's been a consensus like top five, if not top three starter. I mean, last year I think it was elbow injury, and he even had like edema. So only 17 games, 8-5 with a 3.41 ERA, 95 innings. The thing that kind of concerns me, which is kind of crazy to say, is only 99 strikeouts. So he's getting innings. He has a good whip at 1.13. But I think that the thing you're going to see this year with Cole is a lot less whiffs, especially getting up there in age. I just think he's going to get extremely overpicked. Like, I don't think he's a top 10 starting pitcher anymore. I mean, in the rotation, I don't think he's even. I love Luis Heel, just because he was in the Twins organization. But I think that Cole, again, he's kind of like Sasaki. He'll be a decent pitcher, but I don't think he's top 10 worthy in terms of getting picked.
Yeah, and you also got to factor in the fact that Gerrit Cole's coming off an injury-riddled season. I mean, he missed an extended period of time with that, and he is getting up there in age. Like, he's not necessarily going to instantly bounce back if he was when he was 25 or 26. Like, this is a guy that's getting up there a little bit. Obviously, I have a soft spot for Gerrit Cole. I drafted him last year in fantasy. I also drafted him this year for my dynasty team. So I'm a big Gerrit Cole fan just because of the talent that he had. But what, he's 33, 34, somewhere up there. How does he bounce back from injury? And then, as you mentioned, there's a lot of mouths to feed there for innings. And maybe the Yankees kind of switch to a six-man rotation at some point, or they try to limit his innings a little bit to try to prolong him and get him back to being that dominant force. So definitely one of those guys, again, you see the name Gerrit Cole, you're like instantly click the draft button. But how early are you willing to draft him is, I think, a big question mark. This is another surprise, and this is kind of just an interesting one that I'm gonna throw out there, but it's gonna be Garrett Crochet. I love Garrett Crochet. I loved him coming out of Tennessee. Like, I think this guy obviously is a unit, kind of funky motion, left-handed, but people don't realize how significant, especially in Major League Baseball, it is for a player to leave one organization and go to another, especially that first year. Like, there are success stories, like people have success, like Chris Sale, for example. But there are other players that don't transition well to a new organization. And I kind of feel like this is kind of going to be one of those situations for Garrett Crochet. I mean, the numbers don't lie, right? He had a great season last year, 3.58 ERA, 1.07 whip, K to walk ratio of 6.3. Like, he was dominant and effective. He was the only bright spot, it seemed like, on the White Sox. But now he goes into a different situation in Boston. And Boston could be a situation where a lot of unknowns and a lot of mouths to feed as well. I mean, you could have a six-man rotation in Boston with Crochet, Hauk, Bello, Cutter Crawford, Lucas Giolito, another White Sox, and Walker Buehler now on the Red Sox as well. So there's a lot of mouths to feed there. And I think the biggest thing with Crochet is, can he sustain the success? Because a lot of people would argue that Garrett Crochet is kind of in the prime of his career, which I would argue as well. But I'm pretty sure he didn't pitch any time in the minor leagues, right? Or like it was, yeah, like he didn't
Yeah, you're
develop
correct.
as a minor leaguer like some of these other guys did. And minor leaguers do at times have success and they have that high moment, but how do they bounce back? So for me with Garrett Crochet, I think it's just a lot of unknowns, especially since his ADP seems to be a way higher than people should really give it credit for. I think he's one of those guys that would be a good guy to have down the line. But right now, I think he's slated at the eighth best position starting pitcher, and I just don't see that being the case, especially early on. Maybe as the season progresses, but it's going to take time. It's going to be an adjustment, and I'm not willing to make that adjustment at least right now. Okay, what about your final player?
Yeah, my final guy. This one hurts to say, but it's Pablo Lopez for the Twins. This one I didn't. I was really struggling trying to think of starters because like this is it was a little hard to find kind of think of like busts because especially like Pablo Lopez, I love him. I still think he's a great pitcher, but I think that he hasn't been. This is kind of more like how much money he's earning, but he hasn't been the breakout ace. I think he's getting paid to be. I mean, I think he's getting 20 million this year. But I think like you see Pablo Lopez, he was not bad last year. I mean, he pitched 32 games, 15-10, 4.8 ERA, 185 innings, 198 strikeouts, 1.2 WHIP. So he's not bad. Like this is as a Twins fan, like I look forward to Pablo today because he's a good pitcher. But I think that the numbers are kind of a little scary to me in the fact that he's really starting to just get hit around a lot. I mean, 185 innings, the 4 ERA is a little scary because if he was only pitching like 100 innings, that'd be all right. Like that's just could be a rough sample. But I mean, he's pitching nearly 200 innings. He's giving up a 4 ERA. Along with that, I mean, he's given up 180 hits. I mean, but he's not really walking a lot of guys. But 26 home runs. So I'm kind of on the downer train on Pablo. I think that like 2023 he was here, 2024 he was here. I think he's kind of starting to go down, especially the fact that he's been around for I think like 7 years. He's only 28, but I think he's kind of in that kind of questionable area. Again, he's going to get strikeouts. You know what you're going to get, but I think that I'd be a little weary of those numbers like hits, home runs. I could just see him getting hit around, especially he always starts the year rough. It seems like, again, I'd say he's probably getting picked. I don't know his ADP, but it's probably around 70 or so, which I wouldn't totally avoid him, but I just think I would pick like Bailey Ober instead of him, like something like that.
That's a hot take. I don't know if I'd pick Bailey over Pablo, but I also just don't really trust the starting pitching for the Twins because Rocco pulls them after the fifth inning anyway. So it's like, what's the point of drafting a pitcher because he'll be throwing a no hitter and he'll get pulled. But I actually think the opposite of Pablo. I think Pablo is going to have a better year than last year, just because I feel like Pablo's year last year was so disappointing following the previous year, and he's a really good pitcher, and he's already earned the trust of Rocco. And I think this is going to be a guy that could consistently go out there, pitch 6, 7 innings regardless of what the score is or how he's doing. For my final one, I'm going to go with Blake Snell. Again, another name that's just kind of up in the air. I believe he's like 32, so he's getting up there a little bit in age. Obviously, left-handed pitcher. He's kind of played all over. First year with the Dodgers this year. Last year, he was with the Giants. Again, he was one of those guys that held out the very last minute. Him and like guys like Montgomery had very slow starts to their new teams. They held out to as late as possible. And it was disappointing for him at the start, but definitely picked things up and kind of rebounded nicely to finish with a 3.12 ERA, 1.05 WHIP. One thing that does concern me is his strikeout to walk ratio, 3.3, which isn't necessarily terrible, but this is a guy that's going to throw out some walks and not necessarily have tremendous strikeout stuff when his walks are up there as well. And it depends on your leagues, right? Like every league's different. A lot of roto leagues, head-to-head leagues, things of that nature. It just could be a little spotty and a little bit cause for concern. On top of that, he's going for the Dodgers. Now, the Dodgers seem like they have every starting pitcher imaginable. I mean, you look at it, they got a lot of talent. Obviously Yoshi, and then they bring in Roki Sasaki. They did lose Walker Buehler. Clayton Kershaw, I don't know what his role is going to be. He recently just signed. So they got a bunch of guys there. And then they also got some guys like Tony Gonsolin, expecting him to be back at some point, maybe even at the start of the year. Same with Dustin May. I mean, there's a lot of pitchers on this Dodgers staff. And the biggest thing that I'm curious to see is I think Blake Snell is going to be a starter. And he's definitely, I think, the top picked starter as far as ECR and everything like that for the Dodgers right now. But how does he adjust, and what did the Dodgers rotation look like? Is it like a 6-man rotation? Do they filter guys in and out? Do they try to conserve innings? Because they have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. We also got to remember too, Shohei Ohtani is going to be back pitching. I mean, that's a lot of pitchers for the Dodgers that I just don't know if I feel comfortable drafting Blake Snell, especially with how bad he started the year last year. If I were to pick up Blake Snell, I feel like it would be somewhere off waivers after he kind of lets that rough start subside and really kind of turns it around and has a Cy Young type of season. I think Blake Snell is a guy that in maybe end of May, early June is the guy that you pick up off of waivers, especially because I think he will be dropped in leagues just to his slow start. I'm a guy that could kind of turn things around as the season goes on, but definitely one of those guys that I'm not drafting, especially for as high that he's being drafted right now. Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter, The Truth as one, to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth. Are you looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharp through focus and memory? Look no further than Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Blendland Sports, AZ, and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity while also maintaining ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON 15 for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, one you love the most, Niall Hesson, joined once again by Lucas Hesson. Take care and good night.